Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Apologies for the delay. Our work session ran a little bit long. We'd like to call this meeting to order. We do have a quorum. All board members are present, along with our superintendent and our board attorney. If you will all stand and join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Bridges for his comments.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Attorney Malone, last time we met, I didn't have an opportunity to say what I'm about to say because you hadn't taken a certain action, but wanted to congratulate you on your superintendent search process and the naming of Dr. Robert Taylor as the next superintendent of Wake County Public Schools. I've known Dr. Taylor for several years and know him to be an outstanding educator, but more importantly, a good person that's concerned about the welfare of all the children under his charge. If you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. So one of the things that I look at in systems that I work with is what I call their directional system. And I found that here in Wake County Public Schools, with your strategic plan that's grounded in equity, that you have a clear direction, and that's a positive thing for any school district. I've been working daily with the chiefs and had my first superintendent's leadership team meeting and met a number of the area superintendents and assistant superintendents and executive directors and really enjoyed my conversation and time with them. As a matter of fact, last week I managed to go and visit 4 schools. And if you don't really know about educators, sometimes when we do the things that we do administratively, we have to justify that by going to see kids. So I made it to some elementary schools, and I make a beeline to the kindergarten wing, because that's always what I like to do. During my time in working in several school districts, I would often talk to community members, community leaders, politicians, members of the faith community, the business community, and I would ask them this question: is it important for all children to receive a quality education? In all my years of working, I've never heard somebody say no to that. It's always yes. Where the rub comes in is how we provide that quality education. And oftentimes we would have to agree to disagree with respect. I think the core business of any successful educational entity is teaching and learning. And at the core of what we do, that's really what it's about. And if we stay in that space, we'll make good decisions for children. Even when we disagree on the how to provide, if we stick with the fact that teaching and learning is our core business and what we're doing is in the best interest of all of our kids, then we'll be just fine. I believe the school systems are either moving forward or they're moving backwards. And if you're trying to hold a line, you're moving backwards. I didn't just become familiar with Wake County Public Schools in the last 30 days. I've known about Wake County Public Schools my whole professional career. And during that time, it has always been viewed as a leader in the educational arena, both at the state and the national level. And I'm convinced, with the strong support of this community, with this board, and Dr. Taylor, that those things will happen in the future. Thank you. Sure.
Thank you, Dr. Bridges. My comments today are short. I just want to say welcome to our Track 4 students and staff members. We also had our modified calendar folks start, and very soon our leadership academies and early colleges will begin. We had a robust, doesn't even seem like a good enough word, discussion about transportation. I want to thank all of the parents that reached out and shared whether they would provide transportation to their students. And we look forward to having further discussion on transportation at our next work session on August 15th. And I know there will be more information in Dr. Bridges' updates, so I'm going to leave it at that and turn it over to Vice Chair Haggerty.
Thank you, Chair Mahaffey. I will also keep it brief. I had the opportunity this past week to meet with a representative from an organization called myfuturenorthcarolina.org. And this is a great organization. I'd encourage you to reach out and learn more about their work. One of the things that they are interested in, I guess an area that they're interested in involves like metrics and performance and how we can properly evaluate the job we're doing in terms of educational attainment for our students, economic impact, and how we compare to other districts in the state and then other districts around the nation. And so one of the things that they do have available is a fact sheet. I just wanted to share one with each of you. Please take a look at it. You'll see areas where we're doing well and some areas where we might be falling a little bit short. I will say that I was very encouraged. A lot of the areas that they have looked at and identified are areas that we have looked at and identified ourselves as part of our strategic plan and the process that we had going through all of our aims and goals and all of those different individual elements. So I think there's a lot of alignment here. I think this reaffirms a lot of the work that we've done for where we need to put our focus, and I hope you'll take a look at it, and I hope it's helpful to you. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Waters?
Thank you, Chair Mahaffey. I want to say welcome back to all of our students and educators who have already started the 23-24 school year. I'm wishing you much success this school year. And yesterday was a really special afternoon for me. I had a chance to attend what turned out to be a nice work-family reunion. It was the retirement party for Chris Brown, a longtime Central Services employee and friend to many. It was probably 25 or so years ago that I was hired to work for her and got a chance to express my gratitude as well as to express my gratitude to some of my other colleagues, Kevin Gilliland and Juliana Mooley. So just wonderful to see how everything has come full circle, and the investment that we make in our students, you never know how that might come back, because that was when I was a senior at high school, and so just to be able to express that gratitude means so much to me. And I know that we have so many of our educators who are doing amazing work, and I hope they don't feel unsung, because you have certainly made impacts on your students that you probably will never realize. So that was a great moment for me. And I appreciated seeing the excitement from the Hodge Road Elementary School community at their open house last week. There were so many families gathered to meet their teachers and to gather information on a variety of topics, from carpool to lunch options. They were very organized. They had it all. And so there was so much energy in the room. And so I really appreciated seeing so many come out to that building. And I know they're going to have a great school year. And one thing that was really special about this, they were also registering for the Girl Scouts, Ms. Johnson-Hostler. So appreciate that. I know, Ms. Mahaffey, you have a special place in your heart for them as well. So I really appreciate all the work that our schools do to provide opportunities for our students. And I was also fortunate to visit Knightdale Elementary with Principal Teresa James. We just had a nice time of chatting, and I don't want to spoil the surprise, but I think that all of our students and educators, when they come back to Knightdale Elementary, they're going to be very, very happy with what they see. So very excited about the work that is going on there. And so really nice to be at Knightdale Elementary. And as I was looking at Principal James's wall, I saw she had a Florida State diploma. And so we had a little bit of a rivalry there, because I was born in Gainesville, which is the home of the University of Florida Gators. So that's probably one of the biggest college rivalries in the country, the Gators versus the Seminoles. And so we joked about that for a little bit at a time. And so I just had a chance to really reflect on that. And having grown up in Florida, there was really a time when people associated Florida with great sports and teams and wonderful family vacations. But many of you may know that in the news, Florida has been certainly the topic of discussion lately. And if you've heard about the state's new Black History standards, those say that that it's okay to teach that slaves developed skills which in some instances could be applied for personal benefit. I share this because we have seen time and time again that things surface in one part of the country and then move around to multiple states. And so when decisions are made about Black, Indigenous, and people of color that are not transparent and without input from those key stakeholders, there is going to be great harm. So I think it is really important for us to be vigilant in how things are presented, especially as we look at what we teach in our classrooms, and particularly as it pertains to history and culture, and affirming the lived experiences of people in this nation. So just want to lift that up. And so as we think about those things, there are so many ways to uplift our students and our communities, and a lot of that can be done through organizations that exist to help support and build up our school communities. So I just want to share again a couple that are really good at helping our students be prepared and equipped for their first days of school. I want to continue to lift up Note in the Pocket. They provide clothing for school-age children so that they can not worry about their appearance and be prepared when they come into the school building. So if you're able to give in that way, I hope you'll consider that. And Tools for Schools, another great organization that helps with school supplies. So many ways to give and support and to be able to participate in the success of our students and our educators this year. And so I hope you will consider looking into one of those organizations. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Waters. Ms. Edmonds.
Thank you. I want to join in my colleagues in welcoming our Track 4 students and families. Centennial Magnet Middle in District 5 started last week. They're on the modified calendar, and Vernon Malone College and Career Academy starts 1 week from today. I extend a happy new school year to all of these students, staff, and families. Thanks to the Raleigh Chamber of Commerce for hosting their equity conference last week. I attended with Chair Mahaffey and Vice Chair Haggerty, as well as about a dozen of our staff. This event was held at the Convention Center, and I believe it was sold out. Many of the workshops were crowded, even standing room only. And the big takeaway message for me was how everyone benefits when we practice equity. Equity is good for business. It benefits not just ourselves, but everyone around us. And I stated last meeting how concerned I am about some of the legislation pending in the General Assembly, legislation that is not based in equity and inclusion. I know we are committed to equity in this district, and I hope we do all we can to continue to do what's right for students and children, as forces outside of Wake County Public Schools are working to make things less equitable. Finally, a thank you to two of my principals, Principal Sykes at Diller Drive Elementary and Principal Miller at Middle Creek Elementary. They both invited me to some of their back-to-school events. Principal Sykes on her Popsicles with the Principal Tour. I'm calling it a tour because there's at least 4 stops and 4 dates. I joined her and some of her staff last week, and I'm going to attend another one next week. I was unable to attend the events at Middle Creek Elementary, but I'm finally going to tour that school next week. There were just a few District 5 schools that I didn't get to in the last school year, and so they are at the top of my list at the start of 23-24. Thank you.
Dr. Ng.
Good evening. I wish to say welcome back to the Track 4 students and staff at Durant Road Elementary School and Durant Road Middle School. And for all those students and staff on the year-round calendar who have already been back to school, I hope that the school year is off to a great start. This past weekend, I went to watch my daughter compete at the Southern Zone Age Group Swimming Championship here in Cary at the Triangle Aquatic Center. Even though it was right here, my daughter actually had to stay in the hotel with the rest of the North Carolina team. Being that it was her first time being away from home, she experienced a roller coaster of emotions, including feeling homesick, exhaustion from not getting enough sleep, nervous stomach before her event, the joys of getting into the finals, and then the tears when she didn't do as well as she had hoped. I was overjoyed to see her win some medals, but more importantly, I was glad that she learned some important life lessons. She had the chance to witness what hard work, perseverance, and dedication can achieve. When you do everything that you can to learn and practice your skills, and then you tough it out through the hard times, it builds character, even when you don't achieve what you want. The prize is just the icing on the cake. Ultimately, it's the journey that counts. As the students in the traditional calendar school prepare to get back to school, I want to challenge every student to do their best in their classes every day, even when it's frustrating or difficult. You may have to stay up late to finish your assignments, or you may get stuck on a problem that you can't figure out, or you have to finish your night job at the local fast food and then come home and finish your work. Just keep pressing on. It'll be all worth it. Later on, you will be hearing about the efforts by Wake Together tutoring programs, and I want to encourage everyone who has available time to volunteer their time to help out our students. For all the grandparents or recent retirees out there, this is a great opportunity to be part of the solution and to make a lasting impact on the children of Wake County. You can get more information and sign up to be a volunteer at waketogether.ymcatriangle.org. Finally, this week I am planning to visit Pleasant Union Elementary School and Durant Road Middle School, and I am eager to see what great things they are doing there. When the traditional calendar schools resume, and I hope to do more school visits in the coming months. Thank you.
Thank you. Last week, I went to Partnership Elementary School and Moore Square Middle School. I want to welcome those students and families and staff back. I want to congratulate senior partner / principal Jeff Kimbrough on his first week at Partnership. And I want to thank Principal Taylor at Moore Square for continuing to hire North Carolina State University graduates. I want to thank North Carolina State for providing us with teachers. I go out of my way to try to thank all of our new teachers at the schools I visit. If you ever see Principal Taylor, she really appreciates NC State, so be sure to give her a go pack. The intent of my visit to both schools was to examine our visitor management system, which is newly implemented across the county. I want to congratulate the security team on the rollout of these devices at our schools that are currently operating. The experience went well for me. It was quick. It was relatively easy. I appreciate that the security team is being responsive to feedback on how we can continue to improve the visitor management system. I want everyone to understand that this board and our school system takes safety and security extremely serious. It is a priority for us and will continue to be so. And as you have experiences with the visitor management system, if you have any feedback, please give it to us. We welcome it to make it better. Second, I want to thank Wake Med and Mrs. Andy Curtis for inviting us. We get invitations as board members to community events, and they invited us to their farmers market and medical simulation experience, which I attended with a few other countywide office holders, including Raleigh City Councilor Christina Jones. And it was a wonderful experience. They do a lot for our county, for our schools, and for our students and families. So I thank them for that. And last, since I will not be here in person next board meeting, I'm going to say this now because it is the start of the fall athletic season, which means our student athletes are back, our coaches are back, officials are getting ready. And I want to just encourage parents and family members and people who come to sporting events to remember that these are high school athletics, to think about their own sportsmanship, the words that they say, and to be encouraging. And if you would like, we can always use more coaches to volunteer, more volunteer coaches. Certainly we can use more officials at all times. So please be respectful and kind, and remember these are student athletes, not paid professionals that we might otherwise yell at on TV. Thank you.
Great reminder, Mr. Hershey. Ms. Caulfield.
Thank you. I just got a vision of like Sunday Night Football and everybody screaming and yelling. It is like that. I want to say welcome to Track 4 and wish everyone a great 2023-2024 school year. Friday, I'll be attending a UNC Health is hosting an annual Stuff the Bus school drive this Friday. Look forward to stuffing the bus with school supplies that will be donated by UNC Health, their teammates, and community. It's that time of year where everyone gets shuffling with their new backpacks and fun school supplies. So if you're able to maybe offer some extra supplies in your community to help out those students who may not be as fortunate, you could reach out to your school for more information on what they have available and how they can share and donate. And I will post some opportunities for families to see as well. As things get back to more of a normal schedule, whatever that is, I would like to fit in some community engagement and hold a tea time in my communities locally and hear from our families. I started this role with parent engagement being an important part to me, and I'm hoping that reaching out to the people, they can provide some places in our community where we could meet in all throughout District 1, where we can engage and share conversation in our community. So I will also post on my webpage, on my Facebook page, and hope to hear back from communities how we can engage with each other and start to talk about more opportunities that we can be more involved in our schools. And I will keep that short. That's all I have to add today.
Mr. Swanson.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Mahaffey, and I will join my colleagues and keep mine short as well. I thought I heard something. I want to also congratulate and say welcome back to our Track 4 families and students. I'm wishing you all a successful academic school year, and I'm looking forward to going to tour the year-round schools that are in District 9, and so I look forward to getting to those before the traditional calendar starts. Also, Ms. Waters did a plug, and I want to do another plug for Wake PTA's, Wake Ed Partnerships tool for schools. If you have any additional school supplies that you would like to give or donate, please go to wakeedpartnership.org to look at some of the locations and some of the YMCAs that are partnering with the Wake Ed Partnership to bring school supplies, so teachers do not have to continue to go in their pockets to provide resources to their students. And so that is the end of my remarks. Thank you.
All right. Ms. Johnson-Hostler.
Thank you very much, and I will make an additional plug for Stuff the Bus. Not only can you take those supplies, but it's also fun to see the competition between all of the different departments at UNC Health for Stuff the Bus. So please feel free to stop by and stuff the bus, and they also will let you stuff yourself in there so you can see how much stuff they stuff. That's always fun to me to see, like, the neat, Tetris ways that they are packing those buses. So please consider giving. You all know I'm a huge fan for Wake Up and Read, so a reminder to you, because I just got a reminder sent to me that it is sign-up time for back-to-school public events. So Wake Up and Read, which they can be found at wakeupandread.org for any volunteer opportunities. So they're going to be at a multiple community festivals, including our Raleigh Parks and Rec has a couple open houses that they will have books that they can give, and they give a little bag of 5 books for age-appropriate students. They'll also be at the Garner Latino Festival, but if you go to their website, there's a whole list of summer activities before back to school that you will be able to go and volunteer. So please consider volunteering for Wake Up and Read. Again, as my colleagues have said, welcome back to all of our folks who are returning to school. And also, it is a reminder in my own house that even though our educators are not back in the building for traditional, they begin working really hard before they step foot back in there on August 21st. So also to all of our educators who are starting to prepare their lesson plans for the next school year, happy lesson planning. That's what I've been seeing in my house for the last 2 weeks, is lots of lesson planning throughout the downtime, and an acknowledgement that our teachers really do work 12 months a year, although we acknowledge that they mostly work 10 months a year. But I don't know any teacher, including the one I personally know, that doesn't work 12 months. So as they prepare to get back, send lots of love and kindness to them as well. And then lastly, thank you to Springfield Baptist Church. I have several of my schools where there are a lot of church, and Ms. Mahaffey and I share Lincoln Heights, which I will acknowledge that church when they go back on the traditional calendar. But thank you, Springfield Baptist Church, for sending your men in suits to cheer on our students at East Garner Elementary School as they started. I know it's my favorite, cheering the students in, and they love it, and they're excited to have people, especially it's the first day back. They're still a little groggy. They have all the range of emotions, and it is wonderful to see people there cheering them on. So again, thank you to all the participants and supporters of our schools.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson-Hostler. And I do want to take one moment to thank thank someone who is moving on in their educational journey, and that is Dr. Paul Coe. This is his last board meeting. And I forgot to say it because I really don't want to say it, Dr. Coe, because we've really enjoyed having you here and working with our students and bringing your insight as someone who is a principal and a teacher and coming from a different part of the country to bring your work to Wake County Public Schools. And we just want to say thank you and wish you well on the next part of your journey in education. And we know that you're going to continue and not be a stranger to Wake County. So thank you very much and best wishes to you. With that, at this time, if we could get a motion to approve the meeting agenda for tonight.
Chair Mahaffey, I move adoption of the agenda.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any comments, questions, concerns? Okay, at this point, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed, nay? All right. And pull this up. I just want to welcome everybody who is here and remind everyone that these board meetings are conducted for the purpose of carrying on official business of the school system. And the public is cordially invited to observe, and persons who willfully interrupt, disrupt, or cause disturbances at an official meeting may be directed to leave by the presiding officer. Members of the audience should show respect for any speaker by refraining from loud comments or other disruptions, and those disruptions from any person or persons of a public meeting will be subject to action in accordance with General Statute 143-318.17. And I say this as we move on to public comment. Speakers commenting on items on tonight's agenda will be heard before speakers commenting on other topics. All other speakers will be heard in order of sign up. If the public comment portion of the agenda exceeds 30 minutes, board policy states that the board chair reserves the right to conduct other board business before inviting the remaining speakers to the podium. Members of the public are welcome to offer comments or criticism directed at substantive ideas, actions, or procedures of the board and individual board members. The laws and policies of North Carolina provide that issues or concerns involving individual personnel and individual student matters are confidential and therefore not appropriate for the public comment setting. Those offering comments to the board, including students, may discuss issues and matters of general concern. Concerns related to personnel or student matters may be addressed through applicable WCPSS personnel, the grievance policy, or other applicable policies. In the interest of maintaining civility and decorum, speakers are encouraged to address their comments to the Board of Education and to refrain from personal attacks and insults directed at the board, individual board members, staff, or members of the general public. Please remain at the podium during your speaking time. Any materials you wish to share with the board should be handed to our board attorney, Mr. Malone, either before or after your comments. During public comment, you may speak for up to 3 minutes, and please note that the microphones at the podium are adjustable. Once you begin speaking, the green light at the podium will illuminate, showing that your 3 minutes has begun. A yellow light will light up along with a brief audible tone when there are 30 seconds remaining in your time. And when your speaking time is up, you'll see a red light and hear an audible tone. When your time is up, the next speaker will be called to the podium. Speakers are asked to respect the time limit and to speak for no more than 3 minutes. You may choose to speak for less time. We have 13 folks that have signed up for public comment. We will begin with on agenda. Our first speaker is Jessica Lewis, followed by Janet Peterson. All right. Ms. Peterson, followed by Colleen Miller.
And you're still asking parents for school supplies. Something is wrong here. In addition, North Carolina was given $6,000 million in federal pandemic stimulus funds. That's $8 billion. Wake County Public School touts a 90% and over graduation rate, while our proficiency rates are around 50%. How is that possible? I don't think taxpayers are getting their money's worth. Okay? I heard you talk today about school supplies. Maybe the warehouse needs to be revamped. Well, maybe we don't need those vis-a-vis markers or those overhead transparencies anymore, and we need things that teachers and students really use. Of course, tonight I'm really here to talk about Policy 3210. I really do not understand why we continue to struggle with it. You need to take the students out of the challenge committee and put members from the community in that place. I want to say that these students are not able to buy alcohol, buy cigarettes, or even rent a car. I can't understand why you would ask students to be part of a committee that may read a book that is sexually inappropriate. I don't understand it. You cite State Statute 115C98 and the Policy 3210 when addressing the Central Instructional Materials Committee. The statute states that a local board of education may establish a community media advisory committee to investigate and evaluate challenges from parents, teachers, and members of the public to textbooks and supplementary instructional materials on the grounds that they are educationally unsuitable, pervasively vulgar, your term you like, or inappropriate to the age, maturity, or grade level of the students. I heard Dr. Bridges say we want a strong, supportive community, and part of that would be adding more people from the public and parents on your committees. The Pavement Education Project has noticed a trend throughout our state. It is obvious that some school districts purposefully are not including books that introduce ideologies to elementary age students. It is obvious. Take a look at the site. Not to say they don't have inappropriate books in their middle and high, but mostly it's you can see that it's a deliberate trend not to include them as well. So I challenge you to do better with 3210. I also think it's very inappropriate for you to cite your personal opinion up here of legislation that's being proposed, such as Senate Bill 49 and Senate Bill 90. I think it takes a lot of nerve to state that up here. You're supposed to be representing the public and people in your district.
Our next speaker is Colleen Miller, followed by Joseph Deaton.
Thank you. I'd like to start by saying that Senate Bill 90 is a great bill for schools. I've read it and frankly don't understand why at the last meeting Ms. Edmonds stated if passed it would put gay and trans children in danger. She never explained her reason for that comment. My team, the Pavement Education Project, believes that all children, not just gay and trans, will continue to be in danger until this bill is passed. Senate Bill 90 was thoughtfully crafted to correct the numerous shortcomings in current statutes and in our education system. It protects the liberty of parents, not school employees, to direct their child's education and their medical and mental health care. It enhances transparency so parents have better oversight in their child's education. Those who oppose Senate Bill 90 prefer that public education is run with totalitarian authority by educators, disregarding the importance of parents in their child's education. It's arrogant of anyone to believe that educators always know what's best for a child. Your opposition to transparency and accountability causes me to wonder if you prefer running schools as a secret society, grooming students to distorted agendas. Well, the status quo is not acceptable as schools continue to fail our students. This is demonstrated by the poor literacy rates. The latest school report card for Wake County is 41% students not proficient in math, 40% not proficient in reading. There are 38 Wake County schools that are low performing. When is the school board going to start focusing on improving academics? I've attended many of your meetings, excuse me, and not once have I heard you address this topic. I hear about equity, inclusion, diversity, not academics. Academics is the primary reason for schools, and with the budget Janet just spoke of, It's reasonable to expect much higher proficiency rates. At the last school board meeting, we heard the budget for textbooks was about $36 a student. I agree, that's too low, but I understand students don't have textbooks. So how is this money spent? Is it spent on purchasing books filled with sexually explicit content, profanity, gender delusions, and violence? Spending valuable resources on garbage like these books instead of textbooks is unconscionable. You can feed garbage to pigs, but children deserve better. Irresponsible, quote-unquote, professional librarians are placing harmful books in our schools. By the way, our attention is not exclusive to books about gay and transsexuality, quite the contrary. Many of these books we've mentioned normalize deviant behaviors among minors, sexual behaviors. I'll read from one book, and you can see the word count here, the profanity count. Eugene's penis was bigger, way bigger than a teen-sized tampon. I was a flower, and I opened, I softened, ripened, and warmed. I thought like a woman rather than a girl. As he found his way inside me, I wondered fleetingly if this was what sex was like for my mother. Much more sexual content here. Librarians, excuse me, who place books like this in our schools have little to no respect for young readers. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Joseph Deaton, followed by John Balog.
Well, good evening. My concern with Policy 3210 is that it lacks objective standards and instead leaves the decisions about parental challenges up to subjective decisions of the various committees. For example, the committees are instructed to form opinions about the material as a whole and to not focus on select passages or scenes. But I would suggest an objective standard, for example, something like no passage or scene that describes or depicts any kind of sexual act should be admitted. Another objective standard that I would suggest would be something like no controversial theory may be presented as fact while alternative views and criticisms are excluded. My concern here is that there are certain theories about the nature of the human person that have evolved relatively recently out of postmodernism and existentialism that are being promoted and acted upon in violation of the non-establishment clause. Because already years ago, the Supreme Court held that such philosophies and belief systems, even though they are secular, that they are in fact like religions. So, well, I thank you for your consideration of my concerns this evening. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is John Balog, followed by Donna Lubis.
Thank you, board members, for your time. My property tax for 23 sends 47% to Wake County schools. Some speakers you've heard don't pay taxes yet. I do. I also vote and am becoming a very involved campaigner. I oppose 3210 to limit my speech against the library trans books. My question to you, has the board read any of the studies following transitioning or detransitioning? A detransitioned teen is suing Kaiser Permanente Hospital. Doctors removed her breast during her transgender procedure. Layla Jane is an 18-year-old woman who began to identify as transgender, a male, at 11. Doctors performed a double mastectomy when she was 13. Jane wrote on Twitter, "Mind-boggling to me that a doctor signed off on a double mastectomy for me before I took a sex ed course. I barely started the 8th grade. I was 13. 19-year-old Chloe Cole is detransitioning from gender reassignment that began when she was 12. Ms. Cole said she had firsthand experience about decision children may grow to regret. Gender reassignment caused me lifelong, irreversible harm. She said she doesn't know if she will ever have a child, but she knows she cannot breastfeed. She said that when her parents were questioned about the diagnosis, They were asked if they would rather have a dead daughter or a live son. We hear that quite a bit at the podium. A Canadian transsexual, 35 years old, has requested that the socialized healthcare system provide an assisted suicide lethal injection in order to end long-term suffering and pain. Lois Cardinal has expressed immense regret over a 2009 surgery to create an imitation vagina out of an inverted penis, saying that the euthanasia would be preferable to the constant pain. This month, University of Florida and Brooks Rehab released a study which claimed that 81% of the people who have had sex-change genital surgery over the past 5 years have experienced long-standing pain following the surgery. About 1/3 are incontinent. Said one doctor, "We still have a lot to do." In other words, we'll still experiment until we get it right. Precia Mosley, 25, filed a lawsuit in Gaston County, North Carolina, this Monday, against the medical team who prescribed her testosterone while she was a minor and surgically removed her breasts when she was 18. The surgeon, counselor, and other providers are being sued. How long will it be before a school board, legislatures, counselors, librarians, those who guide these innocent children are sued? Better a millstone around your neck than to hurt one of these. Next, will the school nurse hand out fentanyl? I'm imploring the school system not to support mutilation and medical treatment for the rest of these children by sowing seeds from the books you supply. Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker is Donna Lubis, followed by Julie Page.
That's tough to follow. My name is Donna Lubis. I'm a retired school teacher. I started teaching in the mid-'70s. I've taught in Connecticut, Puerto Rico, Fairfax County, Virginia, and 30 years here in Wake County Public Schools. The public needs to hear from teachers, and most teachers are afraid to speak up. As an AIG teacher in Wake County, we had monthly meetings. At those meetings, run by Wake County Public School, one time, a speaker spoke to us about the effects on the brain of children who were exposed to too much screen time. The brain scans she showed us were frightening. Every student in Wake County Public Schools is given their own Chromebook, which they use most of the school day, taking tests, watching videos, and now using a lot of CMAP. What has happened to pencil and paper? A new policy was implemented this school year. Wake County has directed principals that the only curriculum and activities teachers can use must be approved through them. Only CMAP can be used as a resource. Is this coming from this board? What are you afraid of? Are you afraid of good teaching? Any good teacher that I know, including myself, will tell you CMAP is awful. CMAP will eventually be loaded with your ideologies and agendas. We need to let the public see CMAP. With no discipline support and this kind of curriculum control, some teachers who can't afford to retire are moving to other less controlling counties. I'm told the curriculum is even different in these counties. Wake County Public School is taking the professionalism out of teaching and creating classrooms that do not need teachers. Differentiated instruction is gone. There is an office of the North Carolina Office of Learning and Recovery. Just what the teachers don't need, more support personnel telling them what to do. Wake County Public Schools has cubicle after cubicle of highly paid staff not helping students. Put all these people in classrooms. That might put a dent in the teacher shortage. No, they would never leave their cubicles to work in classrooms. We don't need more testing and data analysis, but more reading, writing, and arithmetic. But that's difficult to do when there are disruptive students in classrooms. And don't think there are, just go in and visit classrooms, K to 12. There are no consequences for bad behavior. The newly hired superintendent is creating a 100-day plan. If it doesn't simply address retaining good teachers, discipline, and allowing teachers to choose how best to teach their students, it's doomed to failure. My late husband was also a public school educator, and we always voiced support for public schools. Now I tell parents to run from them and their agendas. My 4 grandchildren are out of public schools. China is not America's greatest enemy. It's our government-run public schools.
Our next speaker is Julie Page, followed by Chad Stahl.
Hello, Julie Page, Chair of Moms for Liberty, Wake County. These are some of the attacks, name-calling, and slander and public comment about my chapter in the last 2 board meetings. Racists, bigots, book banners, hate group, censor, manipulate, marginalize, malicious, fascist, anti-LGBTQ, anti-BIPOC, anti-government extremist, harassment, Proud Boys supporter, white nationalist, white patriarchy, straight white image mold. All of these are outright lies. The Wake County chapter of Moms for Liberty is not anti-LGBTQ, not anti-BIPOC, not banning books, not erasing history, and not anti-government. The most laughable thing that I've heard is that we want to defund schools because we don't have children in public schools. I'm here to remind everyone that I have 2 children in WCPSS with absolutely no plans to pull them out. We supported increase in teacher, support staff, and bus driver pay, a cut in bloated administrative pay, and to defund the Office of Equity Affairs. We want academic education to be the focus, not social issues. Students need to learn to read and do math proficiently first and foremost. Social justice issues do not take precedence over academics. All students should be treated equally with respect and kindness, period. When someone says that Moms for Liberty has an agenda, I tell them, no, we don't. Our agenda is no agenda. We don't want any agenda pushed on any student. We simply want the kids to learn and become successful adults. Teach academics while at school, keep gender and political ideologies out. That is called common sense, not extremist. As to Policy 3210 and book challenges, I've said this before: revise, redact, restrict, or remove. I've heard parents, seemingly the opposite side, say that they want age-appropriate, diverse, and historically accurate books in school libraries. They also say that parents should have a say in what books their child has access to. I could not agree with them more. We want the same thing. Shocking, right? What is the district's plan to restrict access to content and themes that a parent doesn't want their child exposed to? Why isn't this addressed in any of the new instructional materials policies? With all of the public comment and feedback that you've received about this subject, you are still failing. Pervasively vulgar, 2-year waiting periods, students on review committees, removal by school instead of by district, and more. I suggest you go back to the drawing board. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Chad Stahl, followed by Barbara Bradley.
Hello. It's been a little while. Good evening, everybody. I've never really had the desire to come and talk about 3210 because I think I lean more so on the side of whatever parents need to help their children get through life. They need that access. And then my son and I walked into a comic book store. He's kind of getting into comics now. Big fan of Miles Morales, Spider-Man. Don't know if you know the character or not, but Miles is Puerto Rican. My son is half Puerto Rican. I actually see the desire of him, like, oh my God, this is my guy, because we have some common denominator that I don't have everywhere I go. So I see that, and I can absolutely admit there's a lot of value there and a lot of importance there. We went into the comic book store, and we're trying to figure out, okay, well, where's a good starting point? What should we do? And the girl behind the counter says, okay, if you go to this section, all the comics are going to be all right, everything's going to be cool. If you go to this section, just look at the covers, you'll kind of get a gist of what's inside the comic, and you may want to choose carefully. And I thought, well, that was a weird thing to say in a comic book store. So we go in. I'm like, oh yeah, clearly you can look at certain covers. I'm like, oh, that is going to cause my son some unintended harm. Meaning, we think it's a good idea. We take the book home. He reads it. Next thing you know, he's having nightmares. Unintended harm. That comic book person had the vision to understand, okay, well, you're shopping for a 10-year-old into Spider-Man. Dad, make sure you're paying attention, and if you have any questions, you can ask me. I thought, oh my, well, that's amazing, and that's an appropriate tour of any kind of reading material that a parent might want to suggest for their children. In the library setting, they don't always get that guidance because sometimes there's like 30 or 40 kids rushing the librarian. So it's not always available to them, and I think a lot of the books that are questioned, the covers also don't really give you any kind of clue of what's inside the book. Even the cover of Gender Queer, it's like a cute cover where there's an individual staring into a pond, and you think to yourself, oh my gosh, my child is going through something internally. Maybe this is good. So the parent thinks, okay, this is no problem. And then you open it, it'd be like my son getting to page 7 of Miles Morales, and all of a sudden, there he is, engaged in some sexual activity with Spider-Girl. There's nothing to give anybody any clue that that's what's hiding inside the book. On some of the language here, I'm kind of not sure, because it has language, like on the defense thing, it says that books will be reviewed as a whole. And then when you look at Miller versus California, it says almost the exact same thing when discussing obscenity, right? A work will be found to be obscene if taken as a whole. So it makes me think that you guys, for legal purposes, change the vocabulary not to include words like obscene or pornographic, because you know the precedent is already there, so you chose words that there is no precedent for, and I think that's risky. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Barbara Bradley, followed by Mark Peterson. Barbara Bradley, followed by Mark Peterson.
Hi. This is my first time speaking. I'm a grandmother with little grandkids about to enter the Wake County public school system. I also have been dismayed and bewildered by the denigration of Senate Bill 90. I've read it. It seems to me that it helps keep parents informed about what their children are being taught. A lot of it is dedicated to that, and I don't understand what could be wrong with that. It includes giving parents detailed outlines of courses at the beginning of the semester. Ooh, how horrible. The right to request assignment to another school. You can request an assignment. What would be wrong with that? Require parents to be informed if a child is self-identifying as a gender different from his biological sex. Well, why should that be a secret from parents? Who would not want to let parents know that a child is struggling with that? The right to opt out of courses on human development and reproduction. Well, you can argue that one, but I can see that one going both ways too. It makes it plain, this is a doozy. It makes it plain, this bill, that a parent calling her son a boy or calling her daughter a girl is not child abuse. Well, I thought we knew that, but apparently not. As others have said, schools should be teaching reading, math, and science, and not the latest self-destructive, social, emotional fad that sets kids up for a lifetime of pain and misery. I think this bill actually would go a long way to restoring some trust between the educational system and parents. And we need that trust for the school system to survive. Parents have to be able to trust the educators. Be people we can trust.
Our next speaker is Mark Peterson, followed by Renee Seckel.
I want to begin with an examination of the word grooming. Oxford Dictionary defines grooming as the practice of preparing or training someone for a particular purpose or activity. Wordnik defines grooming as preparing a person for a position requiring skilled behavior, especially by providing opportunity for practice and guidance in making the right decisions, and the act of teaching someone, often for advancement at work. Grooming can be a good thing. Parents want this type of grooming for their children. Your job is to ensure this type is a priority to be practiced in the school system. Wordnik goes on with this definition. The act of attempting to gain the trust of a minor with the intention of having a sexual relationship with him or her. I want to be perfectly clear. I'm not here to accuse teachers and librarians of intent to have sexual relations with minors. I'm here to say the overall effect of the books highlighted by pavementeducationproject.org falls just short of that intent. Most parents have little or no knowledge of the graphic sexual content of these books available in public schools. Safe Library Books for Kids provides another definition for grooming. The deliberate act of bringing a child into a sexual, political, or racial ideology, practice, cult, or lifestyle without the knowledge or consent of his or her parents with the aim of isolating them from their family so the external party can abuse and manipulate them. RAIN, Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network, states that sexual grooming often follows a 5-point pattern: victim selection, gaining access and isolation of the victim, trust development and keeping secrets, desensitization to touch and discussion of sexual topics, and attempts by the abuser to make their behavior seem natural. RAIN goes on to report, grooming behaviors are not only used to gain a victim's trust, but often used to create a trustworthy image and relationship with their family and community. Tyler Swanson recently seemed thrilled with the trust the board is building in the community and contempt for SB 90 by saying the bill usurps the power and constitutional duty of the school board. I believe the school board is using a loophole in the North Carolina law to betray parents' trust. If a creepy neighbor is sharing these books with minors, by NC law they are committing a crime. But if a school teacher or a librarian shares them with students, by NC law they are exempt from prosecution. SB 90 is intended to close this loophole. The school board is acting like a creepy neighbor's battered spouse who out of fear would rather protect creepy neighbors than do anything to stop them. Everyone in the system who allows this to happen sends an unspoken message to the students. The adults in charge approve of the content in these books. Policy 3210 is designed to keep sexually explicit and erotic books accessible to minors forever. The board should trash 3210 and adopt a zero-tolerance policy against grooming literature. Stop the 13-year-long grooming process in our schools.
Our next speaker is Renee Seckel, followed by Mary Richardson.
Hey y'all, I'm here tonight to speak in favor of 3210. I've spoken before, but there are two aspects I'd like to highlight tonight. Number one is to note how well this policy balances the interests of parents in controlling their own child's education and the First Amendment rights of the students and the parents in the rest of the school system. In the PICO case, I'm not going to get the whole name of it right. I think it's Painted Tree School District versus PICO. The Supreme Court affirmed that it is inappropriate and unconstitutional for a school district to remove books from the library simply because they don't like what's in them. So, I've been coming here for, 2 years now, and hearing people say, well, we have to take books out of schools that imply that it might be okay to be gay because we disagree. My God tells me that being gay is a sin, so I think nobody should be allowed to read that being gay is a sin. Well, that's viewpoint discrimination, and it violates the First Amendment, and you as a board would be violating the Constitution if you were to allow such challenges to decide what books were in our schools. So I appreciate the balance that this provides. Now, speaking on the rights of parents, we have always and continue to have, under this policy, the right, if there's something that I don't like in the curriculum my child is seeing or in the library, I have the right to call the school or call the teacher and say, I don't want my child in that lesson. Please provide an alternate. And in fact, I have exercised that right before when my child was in middle school. I have the right, and in fact, it is part of my routine, to say, hey, bud, welcome home. I know today was library day. Let me see what you got. And I flip through it, and I read it. And there have been times when he's brought home a book that I'm not fond of. And I say, you know what? You're not going to read this one. Sorry. Bring it back to school. And you know what? They do, because I'm their parent and I set the rules. That's my job as a parent. And it's my right as a parent to be involved in what my individual child reads or has access to. We have books in my home. I have a bookshelf in the hallway where my kids' rooms are. And there are books on that shelf that my children are not allowed to read. They're on the shelf, but my children know that it is not their right to pick up those books and read them. And because they respect me and the rules of our home, they don't. All of that is parenting. All of that is me exercising my right as a parent. And none of that requires you as a board to parent for me. None of that requires you as a board to ensure that my child never sees, touches, has access to, or even knows exists books that I don't want them to read. That would be inappropriate. That would be you usurping my role as a parent, and I'm glad that 3210 does not do that. Thank you. One more thing. The parents who were saying that there's no reason to keep secrets from parents must have been really lucky. As somebody who was physically and emotionally abused my entire childhood, based on things that my teachers might have told them, I'm just saying they're lucky.
Our next speaker is Mary Richardson, followed by Edith Jones.
Good evening, Board. I spent some time this week looking up past test results, and I was pretty shocked at what I found. As you can see, when I put it out where I can visually see it year by year connected on a graph, it's pathetic. Our test scores for the first 4 years, from 2014 to 2018, were pretty stagnant and straight across. And then, all of a sudden, they dropped off the chart. Our students that were excelling went down. Our students that were failing failed even worse. All I have on here is math scores, except for the not proficient English scores. And you can see math and English non-proficient students run almost parallel. My question for you tonight is, what are you going to do about the failing scores? I could suggest a good phonics curriculum to teach them to read, because if they can read, they can figure out a lot of other things. Maybe find a better math curriculum, because the one you're currently using is leaving half of our students failing. Quality education, that's what we want for our students. Quality. All of the students deserve a quality education. They deserve to learn to read, to do math, to study the history of our country, so that they can compete and get a decent job or a career when they leave school. Your strategic plan, it has nothing to do with achievement, academic achievement. There's nothing in it. There's lots about excellence and equity. We're going to always have students all over that graph. Students that do poorly, students that do well, students that are right in the middle, and that's fine. They all start at a different position, but they all deserve to be challenged to do their very best. The students that are failing deserve to have some extra tutoring. And my goodness, there's enough money in this school system to provide for tutors for these students that need it. There's nothing wrong with giving extra challenges to your A and B students that need harder assignments to challenge them and keep them interested. So again, I'm going to ask you, what are you going to do to improve these test scores and see that all of our students are challenged to learn and do their best? Thank you.
Our final speaker tonight is Edith Jones. Edith Jones.
Hello. I'm coming from Jeremiah 1 and 5, and it states, I knew you before you were formed in your mother's womb, speaking of the children. And the children came from the inside of God. God carried these children inside of him. And then he blew the breath of life into the mother's womb. You came from the same place. You came from inside of God. He carried you. And I know as time went on, you went to grade school, you went to high school. And I know your parents and, educators, they encourage you to be anything you want to be, anyone you want to be, whatever education or doctor, whatever you want to be. And then as you became adults, you fell in love. Your parents were like, okay, I want grandkids. I want grandchildren. You didn't have grandchildren because of them, but you had grandchildren. You fell in love. And you began to have children. Someone that you love with all your heart. You love your family. And you love your children with all your heart. But my question to you is, why should you not expect that from them? Why should you want anything less for these children than to be married with children and with a family? Because the crap and the things that you're teaching here, same-sex marriage, and you're telling these children, telling the girls you can be a boy, telling the boys you can be a girl, doesn't produce a family. It does not produce children. What it produces is confusion and destruction. But my challenge is to the educators to educate your children, to educate the kids, to teach them reading, writing, and arithmetic, and the Constitution. And I challenge the parents. Let not a day go by that you don't tell your children who God created them to be. God created them to be, He created the man to be a man of God, and He created the woman to be a woman of God. And I also say to the parents to come to the school libraries and find out what your children are reading. And I also challenge the parents to talk to your kids. Ask your kids questions. Ask them what the teachers are talking to them about.
All right, this concludes public comment. We are now going to move on to our one information item, which is our superintendent updates. Superintendent Bridges.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Attorney Malone, the board held a work session prior to this meeting, and the only topic on the agenda was transportation. And we have, well, I want to say that I'm thankful to the individuals in transportation, operations, human resources, all the departments who have come together to try to address this crisis. And it is a crisis in terms of not having enough bus drivers to safely transport our children to school. We have approximately 90,000 students who ride our buses each day. Let me go back. A big thank you to the bus drivers for their commitment to our children in this community. We lost approximately 50 to 52 drivers from last school year, but for the 560 who committed to come back and be in this process with us and educating our kids, we're very grateful to them. We have 560 bus drivers, and we have 577 routes, which means we're 17 routes short of a bus driver for those routes. Will impact approximately 2,000 children. We presented a tentative plan to the board today, basically for their input. They gave us a lot of that, as they should. Offer some suggestions that we will go back and try to churn those out. And know that we consider as a number one responsibility, as I said earlier, teaching and learning. And we can't teach and learn if their kids aren't in school. So we're asking any of our employees or members of the community who have CDLs, if you're willing to help us out in this arena, we certainly would appreciate it. We're not asking you to drive for the whole school year. We think that our process will net some drivers as we move along. But for right now, with school starting for our traditional calendar students on August the 28th, we are in need of bus drivers. Them students arriving at school safely and on time is our most important focus. And right now, the 560 who committed to be with us are driving 1, 2, and 3 routes. In order to help address some of the routes that don't have an assigned driver, we go to what we call a Tier 4, which means they'd be running 4 routes. And the backdrop of that is that kids get to school late. So as we continue this process of looking at all options and trying to recruit additional bus drivers, just wanted to make the parents and the audience aware that the board spent a good deal of time this afternoon discussing a presentation from our transportation department.
Thank you, Dr. Bridges. I've been told by our communications department that we missed one of our speakers, so we're going to go back to public comment briefly, and that commenter is Lana Witt.
Thank you, Elise, for correcting that. I appreciate it. My name is Lana Witt, resident of Wake County and taxpayer, prior educator. Been here many times and appreciate all of you and the work and time you put in. Instead of focusing kindergarten through high school students' attention, curriculum, and instruction time on normalizing politically correct and age-inappropriate sexual identity content, please begin to focus as much evaluation time on successful math and reading outcomes, as well as long-term life skills. The test scores are in. How many of our Wake County Public School students can do basic math? How many are reading at grade level? How many will be ready for university, trade school, or forming and then guiding a family upon graduation? With that said, I believe we all agree that in order for certain actions to be publicly acceptable, there must be three things: alignment in timing, alignment in action, and alignment in the person or people doing it. If it's the right timing, the right person, but the wrong action, that makes the entire environment wrong. If it's the right timing, the right action, with the wrong person, it means the choice is wrong. If it's the right action, the right person, but at the wrong time, it's wrong. A neighbor showing a drawing of genitals to my 9 or 11-year-old, wrong. Why? That's the wrong person to be doing that. Another example, a preschool or kindergarten teacher welcoming students to line up by their gender that they want to be today. Why is it wrong? A teacher introducing the idea that a 4, 5, or 6-year-old can choose to be either a boy or a girl is wrong. Why? Because if guardians or parents do not agree with the timing and that activity of interest in this lesson about gender and the option to ultimately change their gender, it's wrong. It seems Policy 3210 overcomplicates the decision-making process for what literature is appropriate at what time and with what age of students. I encourage all of us, especially new legal counsel, Mr. Rod Malone from Tharrington Smith, carefully review the following statutes: 14-190-13, 14-190-14, 14-190-15, 14-190-16, 14-190-17, 14-190-17A. Why? Because it talks about distributing material that contains a visual representation of a minor engaged in any type of sexual activity. If those books are in the schools, it's wrong.
Okay. This concludes public comment. Apologies for the oversight. At this point, we move on to our consent items. Is there a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda?
Chair Mahaffey, I
Yep.
move adoption of the consent agenda.
All right.
Second.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Any questions, comments? Ms. Caulfield.
One of the purchase orders that's on there is for the National Training Network. I'm not sure who would actually answer it, but it says that they have, there's 15 contracted for the middle schools and 15 for the high schools. Says to be determined. Do we know how they determine who gets that?
Is that the item that's on Action, National Training Network Math Coaching Contract?
That is under consent.
Can you say the item number just so we can find it?
Hold on, I backed off of it.
Ms. Caulfield, you might need to refresh. I think it was on consent, but it is now on action.
Okay.
But
I'll
you'd have, but
Yeah.
if you opened your screen early, it might still be on the old.
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, this was on action on Friday when the agenda was
Okay.
published, but
Okay.
it was not, okay. Oh, apologies. All right, that is on action, Ms. Caulfield.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so just to clarify, so we'll be able to have discussion and ask questions at that point?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so it's down at the bottom.
Oh. All right. Yeah. All right. All right. All right. Seeing nothing further, all those in favor of approving the consent items, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? All right. All right. We now move on to our action items. The first one coming out of our Facilities Committee, and this is a resolution on our continuous CIP appropriation. We've asked Mr. Strickland to come speak on this because it does involve money that voters approved during the last bond cycle. Mr. Strickland.
Thank you, Chair Mahaffey, board members, Superintendent Bridges. Tonight for your consideration is a resolution involving the continuous CIP appropriation approved by voters last fall for our CIP program bond efforts. Although it's lengthy, I think it's appropriate to read the resolution, the main points here. This resolution requests an appropriation totaling $365,547,912 for construction funding at Pleasant Plains Elementary, Bowling Road Elementary, Parkside Middle, Wake Early College of Information and Biotechnologies, and preliminary design funding for Morrisville High, Lockhart Elementary, Brentwood Elementary, and Athens Drive High, along with program needs such as permits, fees, life cycle building, life cycle furniture, educational equipment, environmental and ADA work, technology infrastructure, technology devices, security, temporary classrooms, assessments, property acquisition, space needs analysis and prioritization, referred to as SNAP, and partial renovation improvements projects, referred to as PRIMP, program management, and program contingency. This appropriation is in accordance with the master funding schedule, and this funding provides the initial part of our CIP plan for the fiscal 24-25 years.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland. And as noted, this is normally on consent, but again, because it does involve information about our bond funding and because we've moved some things from consent to action to provide further explanation, that's why this is here in front of us today on action. Is there a motion to approve this resolution? Mr. Hegarty?
Chair Mahaffey, I move adoption of the resolution.
Is there a second? All right, we have a motion and a second. All those, is there any discussion, comments, questions? Dr. Ng?
Just for our edification, can you differentiate between the SNAP and the PRIMP? And is it a already designated to particular schools, or is it just kind of at discretion or the priorities of what happens during the school year?
And so projects are submitted through our facility needs portal, and once they come in, they go into one of three categories. They can either be facility modifications, which are paid for by the school. It can be a PRIMP project or a SNAP project. PRIMP is a partial renovation similar to what we did at Brassfield Elementary in the last year or two. SNAP is a space needs analysis where we might go into a school that needs a particular program where they're deficient, such as a lab or a CTE classroom, and we would fund that out of the SNAP program.
All right, any further comments, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? All right, the next.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next item on our agenda comes out of academic advancement, and that is the aforementioned Wake Together High Impact Tutoring. We have Mr. Drew Cook, Assistant Superintendent of Academics. Mr. Cook?
Good evening, Chair Mahaffey, Vice Chair Haggerty, Superintendent Bridges, and board members. As I think all of you are well aware by now, and as Mr. Ng referenced earlier, Wake Together is a district model for high-impact tutoring that's been developed and implemented beginning in the 22-23 school year in close collaboration with the YMCA and several other community-based partners and organizations. More specifically, Wake Together is a collaboration of community partners, families, and schools with the aim to strategically improve academic outcomes for students by aligning resources, building partnerships, providing evidence-based learning opportunities, and also measuring and evaluating impact on an ongoing basis. The Wake Together initiative utilizes evidence-based instructional practices and fluency curriculum to strengthen and enhance student learning outcomes. This high-impact program provides professional learning, materials, and coaching support for staff in our schools. Additionally, that same professional learning, the materials, the coaching support is also provided, importantly, to community volunteers to ensure that all tutors are effectively trained and also adequately prepared to support students in the classroom. During the 22-23 school year, Wake Together utilized the HELPS curriculum for fluency to support literacy for students in 27 of our elementary schools. Nearly 400 coaching sessions occurred with 139 trained volunteer tutors who collectively provided over 4,300 tutoring sessions to students. Professional learning, materials and coaching support, volunteer management, and strategic planning will be implemented again in the 23-24 school year to provide tutors to approximately 30 additional elementary schools beyond the original 27 that we began with last year. In addition to the YMCA and our existing community partners, the Wake County Public School System is also now working with the Wake Ed Partnership to further expand the Wake Together initiative by providing more opportunities for schools and more trained tutors in 23-24, and our plan is beyond 23-24. As part of our continued implementation and expansion, we are working with the Wake County Public School System Data Research and Accountability Office to engage in an ongoing evaluation of the model, training, materials, and overall impact on student outcomes. In closing, it is important to note that this work does align seamlessly, in our view, with the district's new strategic plan, and specifically with aim number 8, which references expanding access to high-quality instructional programming and enrichment activities to provide a point of connection for every student, and also aim number 12, to build strong relationships among staff, families, and community organizations in order to share resources and promote well-being. We look forward to sharing more updates with you on Wake Together and other Wake County Public School System tutoring and academic enrichment opportunities at a future work session or Student Achievement Committee meeting this school year. In the meantime, staff is requesting tonight board approval of the local fund balance appropriation to continue and expand the Wake Together tutoring initiative as outlined. And at this time, happy to answer any questions or provide additional information the board may have.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. Is there first a motion and a second to approve the fund balance appropriation?
Second.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Swanson and Ms. Johnson-Hostler. Questions for Mr. Cook? Ms. Edmonds?
So, Mr. Cook, what's the majority of the $485,000? Is it staff time? Do we have a dedicated staff person that works on Wake Together, or is it multiple people? Can you talk through that a little bit? And then I heard materials, obviously, but if you could just walk us through what that 485 is.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Great question, important question. So first of all, there were and have been some initial startup costs probably on the front end of this in 22-23 that we may not necessarily have to account for this coming school year. But we have contracted at the district level to provide additional support in managing this. I think initially, going back more than a year ago, it still is existing staff members that have other full-time jobs that are helping to manage this. We have spent some money at the district level to help manage the work at each of those schools. The majority of the money is being spent on training of the volunteers and the staff members that are engaging in the high-leverage tutoring program. So the most significant costs are associated with that training. And we anticipate that, again, the majority of the costs for the 23-24 school year would be going directly to the training of hopefully many, many more volunteer tutors and staff members that can help expand the effort.
Ms. Waters and then Dr. Ng.
Just a comment, this is a wonderful example of collaboration between partners and members of the community, so I'm very glad to see that this will be expanded to additional schools, so thank you for your work.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. You know how I feel about this project. Certainly, you know, I wonder in the future, you know, whether there could be a model of like training the trainers, so that you can kind of continue to perpetuate the training without as much of the cost involved. But certainly, you know, this is great that this can be available for the community. I wish we don't need it, but here we are, right? So my question is, are there any kind of metrics that you are going to be able to present to us in the future about kind of the success of this project?
Yes, sir. So the last part of your question and the last part of your comment first, yes, we are working with data research and accountability. We've developed a logic model up front to identify specific performance metrics that we'll be able to trace back to individual students and those that participated in the tutoring, cross-referencing that potentially with peers who maybe had similar academic backgrounds and profiles who did not have access to or engage in the tutoring. So the answer to your question, I think, is quite simply yes, sir. And I would anticipate in the coming year that we'll be sharing with you additional specifics on those outcomes, you know, which if it aligns with what we've seen nationally, we expect there to be some significant and positive impact on student performance in literacy at those early grade levels. And the other thing I want to make this point clear as well regarding the funding. As we move into this next phase of implementation, and I think we've shared with the previous board and certainly for the volition of this board, our intent is for this to be a permanent, sustainable structure within the Wake County Public School System. And so during the 23-24 school year, it's also our intent to work vigorously with our community partners to identify external funding sources to assist the school district's investment or to enhance the school district's investment in this long term. So I wanted to make mention of that as well since you brought up the funding model.
Vice Chair Hagerty?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Cook. I appreciate the presentation. I appreciate you highlighting with the citation to the academic elements of the strategic plan and how this work will be part of our continued work over the next 5 years and adoption of that plan. I want to echo Dr. Ng's comments about the interest in seeing more presentation on the impact of the program, how it's doing, if we're able to track the early program participants through later grades. And then a question that I had was, I know early when we rolled out the program, because we were inventing it for the first time, there's always going to be challenges. One of the challenges early was a bottleneck, and that we had a lot of people that were very interested in participating in the program, but we only had the capacity to train so many tutors at a given time. I know with these funds we're looking to expand capacity. Are there things that we will do different? Will we renew the call for volunteers? Can you tell us just a little bit more about the process and how we'll build this up?
Yes, sir, and I think you yourself experienced that bottleneck firsthand, as did others. And so I think there were some upfront logistics that, given the volume initially, that we simply, quite frankly, didn't have the staffing to be able to manage it as effectively as we'd like to. And so I think, again, transparently, I mentioned 169 trained tutors. I think we had more than 300 that showed an interest. And so I think it's a legitimate question and concern as we go back and kind of Monday morning quarterback what we did this past year. How many folks might we have lost because it took us an undue amount of time to respond back to them? And so I can tell you directly that is an area that we'll be focusing on in kind of this next push for additional volunteers. I think that's going to be really, really important. The last thing that a district or a school wants is to send out a call for help and folks come to help and then we're not positioned to be able to plug them in immediately and specifically on where and how and when. And so I can tell you that's a priority moving forward. And I do expect and anticipate that given kind of the first round of learning in that first year, we expect that process, background checks, et cetera, to run more smoothly. That does take time and effort and money to be able to move more efficiently.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. And for those who are interested in volunteering, I'll just point out that that website is waketogether.ymcatriangle.org. And thank you, Mr. Haggerty. That was my question about volunteering, and I appreciate, Mr. Cook, your honesty and transparency about the situation. And I want to thank Ms. Johnson-Hostler, and I know she, along with Ms. Cash, pushed really hard to make sure that that process could go a little more smoothly, and many thanks to the folks in HR that listened and helped make that happen. And I just want to say, as a parent, I was able to sign up to volunteer at my kid's school online without having to go into the office. So that helped prompt that be easier for parents as well that want to volunteer in their schools. So thank you for that. Seeing no further questions, all those in favor of approving this item for the Wake Together High Impact Tutoring, please say aye. Any opposed, nay? Thank you, Mr. Cook. And now we're going to move on to the National Training Network Math Coaching Contract. I imagine you're staying with us?
I'm staying right here. Yes,
All
ma'am.
right. Take it away, Mr. Cook.
All right. Thank you, Board Chair Mahaffey. So to the question posed by Ms. Caulfield a little earlier, we do want to provide you with a little bit of background and context on the National Training Network, as we'll reference as NTN. This is an organization that offers professional development support that is job embedded and grounded in evidence-based practices for improving student achievement, specifically in mathematics. These practices are research-based and focused on increasing student performance, productivity, and classroom engagement. NTN specializes in providing professional development and coaching services to mathematics teachers across the country and is currently partnered with over 250 schools and districts throughout the United States. This contract agreement will provide instructional coaches in 30 Wake County Public School System secondary schools for the 23-24 school year. Currently, individual school selections are being finalized, to Ms. Caulfield's question earlier, with 15 middle and 15 high schools having been initially identified to receive this support, which we believe will have a significant and positive impact on teaching and learning in secondary math classrooms. I will say, to Ms. Caulfield's question, an important one, we've got those 30 schools that have been identified who have essentially opted in, and we're now in the process of kind of cross-referencing their capacity and willingness to engage as kind of that first group for the 23-24 school year with data. As those results come in, we'll be cross-referencing that to confirm that we've got the right 30 schools that are participating, yes, based on their willingness and capacity to engage in this activity and this work, but also cross-referencing that with their outcome and data for the 22-23 school year, which, as you probably know, we're beginning to get at least preliminarily. So we'll be finalizing that, Ms. Caulfield, in the next few weeks. I will also mention, and it's important to note that that our belief in this program is based on our own recent experiences and work with this model in the Wake County Public School System, as we did initially pilot this coaching model with NTN in 4 of our schools this past spring. While too early to conduct an analysis of impact and outcomes pending some of the data that we know is coming, the feedback from schools, from principals and teachers has been and was overwhelmingly positive. Again, anecdotally, one teacher commented that this was a, quote, great decision to bring this support to our school. Another staff member raved that the immediate impact of their school's assigned math coach from NTN was profound, and she specifically cited their understanding of the needs of the school and the students and the staff, their work in conducting classroom observations and modeling lessons for students and for teachers, facilitating individual and group conversations on instructional practices, assisting with resources, completing administrative debriefs, and also, importantly, submitting written follow-up and feedback to teachers after each lesson that was conducted. This feedback is early and, again, transparently, completely anecdotal. But as this work expands in the Wake County Public School System in 23-24, district staff will be working closely with teachers and with school leaders to monitor this implementation and effectiveness of instructional practices, professional learning, and improve student outcomes on both formative and summative assessments. So yes, EOCs, EOGs, but also the ongoing formative progress monitoring assessments that are being implemented on a regular basis inside the schools and inside the classroom. We certainly plan and anticipate sharing more details and outcome data on this effort with the board in future meetings, just as we would plan to do and anticipate doing with Wake Together and other ongoing initiatives aligned with the strategic plan. And speaking of the strategic plan, as we referenced also with Wake Together, it is important, we believe, to note that this work does directly support and align with the district's new strategic plan, specifically, among others, with AIM 1, which references cultivating high-quality professional learning communities, AIM 2, which references delivering standards-based, rigorous, culturally responsive, and inclusive curriculum resources and instructional practices, and also AIM 3, which references analyzing performance data to guide instructional planning and decision-making. The instructional coaching and professional learning support that NTN will provide is also very much in line with the action steps and implementation strategies shared and discussed with the board last fall, if you may recall, those of you that were here, in a series of Student Achievement Committee meetings and discussions from September through November of 2022. So with that bit of background and context, staff is requesting tonight board approval of the contract agreement with the National Training Network as has been outlined. And again, happy to respond to any questions or provide any additional information that may be helpful.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. Is there a motion to approve the coaching contract with the National Training Network? All right, we have a motion and a second. Questions? Comments? Ms. Caulfield?
Thank you very much for that and for answering the questions. Very happy to actually see that we are applying some of this towards the schools. I know that it would, I'm pretty sure we're at like 41 and 31 middle school and high schools, so it seems like we're at least getting a decent amount of that. And I like the fact that that you mentioned feedback after lessons. Sometimes we wait till the end to see if it works, and a lot of time has passed and we're missing some information. So it seems like that's a really good way to track and see if it's working. So I appreciate that, and thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Mr. Haggerty?
Thank you, Mr. Cook. So I'm just curious, would you say that we're seeing like a shift in our professional development strategy to maybe offer more coaching opportunities or in-school opportunities, or is this, it's always been there in the background, but this is just highlighting it?
That's a great question. And I don't know if I'd use the term shift, although I think that may be a fair characterization. I think the reality is, and we've talked about this many times over the last couple of years, after 2+ years that we've all experienced, the turnover in staff and the tremendous need, and I would say probably unprecedented need systematically, not just in Wake County, but across the country, for rigorous, aligned, evidence-based, effective professional learning. The need has never been greater. And so I think part of this reflects maybe a shift in working to find contracted partners with an organization like NTN that by all accounts have some extremely effective models and have been very successful in the districts and schools they've worked in to essentially help expand our district's capacity to provide the training that our teachers need and deserve, which, as you know, then if it's done well and done right, immediately translates into positive learning outcomes for kids. And I didn't reference it specifically, but we even heard kind of secondhand anyway, teachers referencing in the 4 schools that did this in the spring, students giving feedback about the teachers from NTN and the coaches that were coming in, providing direct support to the students in addition to providing that coaching, real-time embedded coaching with our teachers in the classroom. So I think it's probably fair to say it's a shift. And it's a shift based on the kind of the new landscape of what our needs are as a district and across the country.
Other questions, comments? Dr. Ng?
Thank you so much. I really applaud this project, and one thing that I thought about was, I guess because it's still kind of a growing program, and you're having 15 middle schools and 15 high schools, but I'm thinking, if you were to actually have unlimited amount of money, right? I mean,
that's a dangerous premise, Dr. Ng.
Well, yeah, money grows on trees. But wouldn't you think that having more emphasis on the middle school would make a lot of sense? Because I mean, if you're going to be doing that coaching to the, at the high school level, they probably, more of the middle schoolers probably could benefit from it earlier on, so that, they don't have to play the catch-up at high school. So,
Yeah,
just a thought.
it's a great question, and I think it's one, first of all, I'll say this, even if funding was unlimited, and obviously it's not, I think that, we dipped our toes in the water with this company and this program and this model this past spring. And I think what 23-24 and what is reflected by this contract agreement is we're taking the next step. And, if we see the results that we expect to see and the outcomes in student performance in mathematics in middle schools and high schools, then I would expect that we would expand this, to all of our schools potentially in the near future. I mean, we want to make sure that the efficacy and the effectiveness is there. And I think the other thing is we can be transparent about this. There's lots of room for improvement in our student outcomes in mathematics at the secondary level, and that applies to both the middle school and the high school level. And we see this as one of many important core strategies to help get the results that our students deserve and we need to see across the board, across subgroups, across schools. So we probably could tinker a little bit with how many middle schools and how many high schools. I think our goal initially is to kind of get a sense of how this works effectively at both levels. Thus the reason for kind of the even breakdown in the number of schools.
Further questions? Right. And I appreciate, Mr. Cook, looking at the data to make sure that just because your school didn't opt in, maybe they need a nudge from the district that this is a good idea. I know we have math coaches at the elementary level. Do we have math coaches in the secondary level, or are those usually the department heads?
Yeah, typically it's our department chairs at the high school level. We've got some literacy coaches in some of our high schools, but systemically we don't have embedded math coaches with that specific role being their 100% priority. And so we see this as an additional kind of line of human resource support and capacity building that, will just enhance the outcomes and the learning both for our teachers and our students, which, ultimately is our goal.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Any further? All right. At this time, all those in favor of approving this item on our agenda for the National Training Network Math Coaching Contract, please say aye. Any opposed, nay? Thank you, Mr. Cook.
All right, thank you.
At this time, we move to item 10 which is our closed session items. Is there a motion to move into closed session for the item stated under item 10, closed session?
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to go into closed session. All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed, nay. We are now in closed session. Thank you.